Today we are having Dr.KM.Francis with us. He is a research guide in the subject of economics. He will be speaking about the relationship between philosophy and research with an emphasis on ontology, epistemology, and methodology. Over to Dr. Francis K.
Today, I am dealing with the topic relationship between philosophy and research. Normally, the terms given in the title might not have been familiar with the students because ontology, epistemology, etc. are the terminologies related to philosophy. But one thing we have to realize that if we see a snow mountain in the sea, we can see only 10% of that mountain. Everything, the 90% of that mountain is underwater. Similarly, for research, we study methodology. Methodology is only 10% of the real part of research. The 90% of the research part is lying in ontology and epistemology. And I would like to begin this lecture by mentioning about the educational policy of India government. Last year, India government published educational policy, and in that policy, they emphasized two areas. One is character formation and other is skill development. But I feel that one more thing is to be added to the aims of education system, that is production of knowledge. Because the knowledge system has two parts. One is theoretical knowledge, another is technical know-how. Both are essential for socio-economic development of a country, and research is only the way to accomplish that task, that is knowledge production. And it has two parts. One is filling the knowledge gap, and another is problem solving. And to know much deeper into the relationship, if you just check the European countries, now knowledge production is wholesale in Europe and in United States. How they are managing their growth in knowledge? They really know that contribution of philosophy is the basis of all modern sciences, whether it is mathematics, physics, psychology, medicine, etc. Everything derived its practical conclusions from philosophy. So the educationists in Western countries included the topics related to epistemology and ontology even in the school syllabus. We Indians never have heard about these terms in our school or college curriculum. So by proceeding this subject, the relationship between philosophy and growth of knowledge, by answering following questions. The first question is, what is philosophy? Then what is ontology or nature of reality? Third is, what is epistemology? And what is methodology? And finally, what is the basic structure of research thesis? After my delivery, you will realize that from the first point, that is from the definition of philosophy to the writing of research thesis, this entire 5 steps are a coherent whole. So first we are going to understand what is the meaning of philosophy. Etymologically, philosophy means love for knowledge. This we have heard from many deliveries or in academic discourses. But this meaning does not give any indication to the content of philosophy or its relation to the modern science. Actually, philosophy means study of nature of reality. Ancient books, for example, Lucretius, he was a Roman philosopher. The name of his book, De Rerum Natura. The Rerum Natura means nature of things or nature of the reality existing before us. To understand reality, it is a complicated term in philosophy, but we can just understand the basic meaning of reality. Everything that is in front of us is reality. But actually, in philosophy, the definition is different. But to proceed our analysis, I am giving you just a simple definition of reality. That is, everything appears before us. When I say everything appears before us, in contemporary philosophy, it is termed as phenomenon. But I am using the term just to mean the reality. And reality can be classified into three. This categorization is mine. It is for understanding my delivery. Okay. What are the three categories of reality? First, I have written here as natural reality, or everything that is in this universe except man and man-made things. So I have classified not every reality as reality, but I am dividing it as there is natural reality. It is defined as given reality. For example, water, rain, mountains, tree, birds, animals, everything. The celestial bodies, sun, moon, wind, everything except man-made realities. What are man-made realities? Bench, desk, computer, buildings, automobiles. All those are categorized as man-made realities. And third one is man. And man is, I have given there, man is the combination of both given and man-made. When I say given, it is natural. And when I say man-made, man himself, that is man-made is cultural. That is the product of human labor or human endeavor. And all the human sciences, for example, economics, sociology, history, psychology, even psychology, is based its analysis on the search of the reality man. When I was a student for BA, I had to study many theories in economics. For example, law of diminishing utility, law of fundamental psychological law. Once I asked my teacher, sir, where from the economists invented or discovered the law of diminishing utility? What is the reference? He told me that the reference is obtained in the book of Alfred Marshall. And again I asked the question, where from Alfred Marshall got the theory of diminishing marginal utility? And he gave me another reference, that is William Stanley Jevons, an Austrian economist. Then I asked him again, where from William Stanley Jevons obtained that theory? And at last he told me, William Stanley Jevons observed his own behavior, his own nature, and he also observed the nature of other human beings in his neighborhood. And he realized that he himself and all others are exhibiting a particular nature. Thus, he generalized it and written as law of diminishing utility. So, where from he got the theory, law of diminishing utility? He derived it from his own behavior. That is why in the ancient Delphi temple, there is a dictum, "Hey man, know thyself." So, by observing the reality and generalizing the common behaviors, philosophers made many general principles. And that general principles are now known as different laws in different faculties. For example, Newton observed that when apple cut off from the tree, it falls down. And from that observation, he made a theory. Not from the observation, there are other methods also. I will explain you on the way. So I am pointing that philosophy equal to really science, because philosophy observes the nature and finding out the general laws from that. Where from Freud invented his basic psychological behavior of a human being by observing a human being. Because now, he was a neurologist and he found many hysterical cases. And to know that hysteria, reason for hysteria, he observed a human being. And what he observed in young children, there is in all human beings, there is an engine exists. That engine is food engine. What is the nature of food engine? Sometimes we feel hunger and thirsty. And if we are not satiated by food, if you observe little children, you can see that they become neurotic. If they satiated by giving food, they become calm. Out of that observation, he generalized that in all human beings, food engine exists. That is how the theoreticians and lawmakers or scientists found out theories simply by observing the realities in nature. So I just explained to you what is philosophy and how in various subjects theoreticians derived their principles by looking into the reality. And I am as a next step, I am explaining you the meaning of ontology. Because ontology is the basis of epistemology and methodology. It is defined as the study of being. What is being? Even if you are you are an English faculty, you might have heard about the metaphysics of presence. The postmodernists opposed metaphysics of presence. That you can see in the writings of Derrida. Or sometimes the literature student might have heard about the play Waiting for Godot. Waiting for Godot is a postmodernist expression of theatre that denies the second coming. That means in Heraclitus there is a statement that no one can enter into a river twice. That means every moment that river is changing. You will get that statement from the book Fragments. It is only 40 statements. You can download it and read. So Waiting for Godot is a criticism to the metaphysics of or ontology of being. then what is its relevance in science and research? You just observe a glass of water. That means we are entering into the observation of a reality. What is water? By observing water through our senses, we can realize that it is a colorless, odorless liquid which can be consumed for quenching our thirst. This is the knowledge we obtain through our senses, and how are perceived in our brain, because we know only that much about water. But chemistry teaches that water is H2O. My question is that how did the scientists, researchers in chemistry came to the conclusion that water is H2O? And can we observe that by the light provided by sun and moon? No. Here, Plato classifies that a reality has two parts. One part is intelligible and other part is sensible. Because H2O is intelligible. We cannot see, touch or perceive or experience H2O. But we can quench our thirst or touch the water, smell the water, etc. So water has two parts. One part is sensible and other part is intelligible. How can we came into the knowledge of the sensible part? Plato says that sensible part can be understood by using our senses, but intelligible part can be known only with the help of reason. This is known as Platonic Dichotomy and later named as Cartesian Dichotomy after 16th century, because Descartes, the man who invented analytical geometry or graph paper, etc., has proposed the same dichotomy of mind-body dichotomy. And Plato said that only through reason we can enter into the intelligible part of a reality, and this method of understanding reality is known as rationalism. Rationalists argue that everything in this universe has a reason. That means whether you take water or circle or triangle or everything, you just consider all the elements in the periodical table. And we know that each element is differentiated from the other element through a reason. That means atomic number differentiates each element. That means every element has a reason. And next question is that, is this reason an invention or a discovery? Is that reason in human brain or actually in water? Some persons argue that all the reason is the product of our human intelligence, and those persons are classified as idealists. And on the other hand, some group of philosophers argue that the basic reason is not in intelligence but inside the reality, and those philosophers are classified as materialists in the epistemological sense. Instead of rationalism, Aristotle proposed another method of identifying the real nature of the law of a matter or an element or anything before us. That method is deduction. Platonic method is deduction, but Aristotle proposed induction, and they are known as empiricists. Platonists argue that through deduction, for example, all men will die. Rama is a man. Rama will die. So from a general principle, we are coming into a particular principle. But empiricists argue that we came into the knowledge of a reality by observing, collecting data, classifying it, generalizing it, and came into the conclusion that conclusion is law. This method is induction. So there are two methods to know a reality, or the knowledge can be developed or grown through two methods. One is deduction and another method is induction. And the inductive method, those who are using inductive method is classified as empiricists. These arguments were in BC 500 to 300. And at that time, they have found out certain features of true knowledge. How can we know that the principles we derived out of induction or deduction are true or not? Following are the 5 principles we have to follow to know that whether our conclusions or whether the theory or the matter we have invented, we are proposing that this is the nature of reality. That means H2O is the nature of water. How can we say that our proposition is true or not? For that, we have to follow the mentioned 5 principles. And among the 5 principles, the first one is known as eternity of the observed knowledge. This is highly debatable and not much useful in research methodology, but it is useful in many other theories. For example, in ancient times, the syllabus in academies are classified into cosmology, theology, psychology, ethics. And in the cosmology is now termed as in modern physics, the Big Bang theory. It is part of cosmology. In that, this first feature is very relevant. We will just check what is the meaning of the terms eternal, universal, non-contradictory or consistency principle, the correspondence between reality and empirical validation, because B, C, D, and E, that 4 points are very essential for creating a principle or finding out a problem. And what is eternity? In India, you might have heard about the term Sanadana Dharma. What is Sanadana or eternal principle? Just take the example of a circle. We know that 360 degrees is the basic measurement of a circle. I am simultaneously using the term reason because in ancient textbooks, reason is the term instead of measurement is given. That means the books which was written in BC. I just ask you a question. Can we say that before 50,000 years ago, the reason of circle was 359, and after 50,000 years, the reason of circle will be 361 degree. Can we say like that? No, we know that it is a fallacy because the measurement of circle is 360 degree before 5,000 years and now and in future. That means the property or the principle 360 degree has no past. We cannot say that yesterday 359, today 360, and tomorrow 361. Instead, we can say that today 360, yesterday 360, tomorrow also 360. For water, can we say that yesterday H2O2, today H2O, tomorrow HO2? No, Yesterday it was H2O, today it is H2O, and tomorrow also it is H2O. This means that part of reality, that means 360 degree is the part of circle, that part of reality which has only a state is, neither was nor will. That state is known as being, because it has only the present tense. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow is one and the same. This is known as being, and it is extensively used in critical analysis of contemporary literature, especially by postmodernists. Postmodernist says that there is no being in reality. But earlier it is said that there is being. That being part is a constant part that never changes. It has no part past or future. That means changeless. You know, if already I have explained that there is a reason behind everything, and that reason is changeless. And you know what is the postmodern controversy? Postmodern controversy is that to know postmodernism, we should know modernism. What is modernism? Modernism states that everything has a reason. State has a reason. Man has a reason. Animal has a reason. Traffic has a reason. Literature has a reason. So everything that is against reason is condemned. In economics, we say that human being is a rational animal. But modern theorists are saying that reality is not only rational, instead but also emotional. That means directly opposite to reason. So postmodernists argue for particulars, but rationalists argue for universals and generalities. So even though we are discussing the basic principles of ontology, that is actually used in more contemporary literary criticism or economics or in many other human sciences. And what is the meaning of universality? You know, a principle is true, a knowledge is true only if that knowledge is valid everywhere. We know that in India, for a circle it is 360 degree. In Japan also 360 degree. In America also 360 degree. For a Hindu it is 360 degree. For a Muslim it is 360 degree. For a Parsi it is 360 degree. So in scientific principles should have the feature of universal applicability. That is the second thing. How can we apply this in our contemporary research? For example, a drug is invented for a disease in America. Is it valid in India also? Is it valid in Kerala also? Is it valid in Tricur also? So if there is any discrepancy from the universal, we are going much deeper into the analysis. That is how problem is stated in research analysis. And third feature of true knowledge is principle of non-contradiction. And this principle is applied everywhere in all sciences and in thesis writing. Technically, principle of non-contradiction is defined as A equal to A, B equal to B, A is not equal to B. All scientific dissertations should follow this basic principle. What it means? Mango equals mango, jackfruit equals jackfruit, and never mango equal to jackfruit. This principle is known as either or. A reality is either mango or jackfruit and never mango jackfruit. But philosopher Hegel questioned the universal validity of this proposition. He proposed that in certain situations, contradictory natures fused into single reality. In modern physics, especially in quantum physics, they have invented that the electrons are rotating to the center nucleus. At the same time, the electrons are rotating on its own axis, as like Earth rotates its own axis. But that rotation is not observable or measurable. That means it has both the properties of change and changelessness. That is the contribution, modern contribution in quantum physics. Really, that was invented by Niels Bohr. So there are other categories also of fusion of contradictories. For example, in a battery or in a magnet, positive axis, positive charge and negative charge fused into a single reality. I am not discussing such type of things in this lecture because it is out of the scope of our lecture and it is very difficult also. So what is principle of non-contradiction? You just understand that it is either or principle. And what actually, when we write a research thesis, we should follow this principle top to bottom in various areas. I will just explain it with the example, just to narrate a story to understand the meaning of a principle of non-contradiction. For example, evaluate the following story. A parent with his two children was walking through a paddy field to next village. It's a story. And it was on a rainy day. The path through which they were walking was slippery. Suddenly, the third child slipped and fell down into the paddy field and his dress became shabby. You know, after narrating this story, there are only 4 statements. What do you feel? Suddenly you will realize that I began the story with the statement that a parent with his 2 children. But after some times, I stated that the third child slipped into paddy fields. Then it is a contradiction. So in research writing or in making mathematical theories, how do we create a mathematical theory? We begin with a statement. For example, I know that the Gaussian normal distribution is derived, is a statistical tool applied in every empirical research, the normal curve. That Gaussian normal curve is derived without having any observation of reality. A plus b whole raised to 1, a plus b whole raised to 2, a plus b whole raised to 3. That extends to a plus b whole raised to n. That changed into Pascal's triangle, binomial theorem, and that extends to normal distribution. That means in the entire procedure, we have to check only one thing. All the steps should be non-contradictory. If any path or its conclusion contradictory to the earlier one, it is a fallacy. That is the meaning of the term principle of non-contradiction. Whether you are writing the thesis or checking the coordination of the title, objectives, hypothesis, and conclusion, we should keep in mind that you should develop objectives of your study on the basis of the title, and your hypothesis should be on the basis of the title, and all the objectives are in accordance with the title. Then finally your conclusion also will be in accordance with the title, hypothesis, objectives, chapters, and conclusion. This is never there will be a contradiction in all these steps. This is the basic application of the principle of non-contradiction. I think that it is seen in this theory is seen in the book of Metaphysics written by Aristotle. Later, this theory is publicized and widely applied by the influence of Thomas Aquinas, who is known as scholastic philosopher. He influenced greatly in the development of Western research. Okay, our next is what is principle of correspondence. This principle of correspondence also is highly relevant in research analysis. I will just explain you the meaning of the principle of correspondence by taking an example of jackfruit. Assume that a man in Europe heard the term jackfruit. How does he know what really jackfruit is? Those who are in Europe has no opportunity to see a jackfruit. Now it may not be the case because you can see it through the internet. Okay. I am assume that I am explaining an earlier case. Then what will he do? He search the available books. This is what is known as review of literature. Now it is possible to search in internet. He arrived into a conclusion. How we can say that his knowledge is a true knowledge? His knowledge will be true only when he compare the knowledge obtained from secondary sources or from reason with that of the original jackfruit. You just observe the last statement. The correspondence between knowledge of an object and the nature of that object is known as correspondence. In research methodology terminology, we have a theory and we have to collect data and derive conclusions from data to conclude that the theory or the hypothesis derived from our argument is true. This is known as principle of correspondence. In epistemological terminology, we use different terminology to mention the principle of correspondence. And next one is empirical validation of a proposition. This feature is seen in empirical sciences, in chemistry, physics, economics. There are theoretical sciences, also human sciences or history, etc. But however, what is empirical validation? We have to conduct an experiment and prove our hypothesis through the results obtained in the experiment. For example, how did we accept the medicine or the vaccine for coronavirus? One company invented, one team of researchers invented that vaccine. And they tried that vaccine in a small group of persons. And they identified that 65% is success out of 100. And they again modified it and applied in much wider group, 3,000. And again they experimented it and collected data and made conclusion. In the third stage, they gave this in different parts of the country and made conclusions out of the empirical data. And they concluded that after third stage, they make the conclusion that this vaccine can be used for everyone in our country. Afterwards, India tested that in our country in various places, because that medicine may be acted differently in India or in Kerala or in northeastern states. So we have to empirically validated it, and this methodology is widely in current after 16th century, after the empiricists like Bacon, Hume, etc., influenced the scientific research. And our next section is epistemology. So, if I am recapitulate what we have discussed, already we have discussed what is ontology. Ontology is the study of nature of reality and the features of the true knowledge. That features are eternity, universality, principle of correspondence, principle of non-contradiction, and empirical validation. All these checks are necessary to know whether a knowledge is true or not. This is the real content of ontology. Then what is epistemology? Epistemology is the analysis of growth of knowledge in a human person. How knowledge grows in us. Earlier we said about the features of true knowledge. How this knowledge grows in a human person. From this, really, methodology is derived. You know, knowledge has a sequence in its growth. You know, you just observe the nature, where from all the beings in this nature evolved. Chemistry says that everything is derived out of 114 elements. Two elements joined together becomes a compound, and that is a relationship. For example, hydrogen and oxygen, it has a rule. Sodium and chlorine, it has a rule. Hydrogen, chlorine, it has a rule. That means the proportion in which it is combined. Hydrogen and SO4, that is H2SO4, that is sulfuric acid. Then we know that different compounds join together and forms structures, and different structures join together and forms systems. Human body is has number of structures: skeletal structure, muscular structure, and that turned into a system, and we termed as muscular system, skeletal system, digestive system, nervous system, pulmonary system, secretion, endocrinal system, many systems. So the cosmology says that elements come into a relationship and forms a relation. Different relations forms a structure. Different structures form together and form a system, and different systems join together in a rule and forms an organism, and different organisms form the universe. This is the nature of universe. This is also the nature of a human being. This is also the nature of knowledge growth. This is also the nature of our writing of thesis. You just observe the next slide. Every organism composed of different elements. Different elements join together by a rule and form relationship. In our research at the PhD level, we just observe the relationship, not more than that. Either 1, 2, or 3. And again we are checking whether this relationship, one relationship has any relationship with other relationship. In mathematical terms, we can say that one is simple linear equation, another is multiple linear equation, and third one is simultaneous equations. Many relations are joining together and form a structure. So in research thesis, we never enter more than 3 or 4 relationship. That itself is enough for a research thesis. I will explain you it with example from economics, not from other faculties. Okay, this is the basic nature of growing the organisms and also growing a science. How do you study mathematics? First, numbers, then addition, then multiplication. Really, in multiplication is repeated addition. So that means addition is included in multiplication, 2 functions. Then what is squaring? That is repeated multiplication. That means in each and every step, we are joining the elements and making the relationship, and you are adding the relationship one by one consistently and creating a structure. That is how we are building a house. How do we study language? Words, first alphabets, then words, then sentences, then passages, then essays, then textbooks. That means one is elements, the alphabets are the elements in the language. Then we are slowly creating structures and systems, and that particular branch of science itself become an organism, and automatically knowledge derived from us. And every knowledge is like that. And how do we enter into these rules? Modern epistemology states that three divisions. One is by using reason, that I have already explained. That means I explain that is really it is developed by Plato, but later in 15th century, the proponents of rationalism were René Descartes, the person who derived analytical geometry, then Leibniz, Newton. How did Newton and Leibniz simultaneously derived the principles of calculus? They invented the derivations. That means differentiation and integration. Where from? What is the method of deriving classical probability? From axioms. They never use sense data. And finding conclusions by using reason alone without having any sense data is known as a priori. This terminology is proposed by Immanuel Kant. On the other hand, by collecting data through senses and generalizing it, empiricism, induction, or a posteriori. This a posteriori analysis is the contribution of Berkeley, Bishop Berkeley, David Hume, etc. And what is enlightenment of Immanuel Kant? Immanuel Kant combined both a priori and a posteriori. And he said that no knowledge is possible without using senses and using a priori principles to understand the experienced data. I will give you an example of globe. All the mathematical theories are a priori. It begins with certain axioms and consistently advances arguments and reaches to conclusions. There is no need of sensuous experience prior to the analysis. That is what is known as a priori. Empiricists totally rejected the applicability of a priori theories in the growth of knowledge. They argue that all knowledge begins through sense experience. And Immanuel Kant fused both together. I will explain you the fusion. What is that fusion? You know, what is the difference between kilogram and weight? Heat and temperature. weight is a reality, but kilogram or the measurement for that weight is a man-made thing. So we can experience weight, or we can perceive weight by picking a commodity or picking a goods. But how can we communicate to another? How can we transfer our experience or this perception to another person? We have to translate that weight into measurement. And that measurement is a priori category. 1, 2, 3, all these numbers are a priori, infinite. What is a priori? We cannot attribute it into, we cannot touch it, see it, or feel it. That means intangible, abstract. You can see 2 monkeys, 3 sweets, 4 birds, 5 books, 7 computers, 30 students. Can you observe 1, 2, 3, 30, infinity, etc.? Can you show me temperature? I can show you, I can feel heat. But measurement is possible by a concept. That concept is derived through our a priori principles. Just take another example. Observe a map or globe. Lines on the map are longitudes and latitudes. Where from we derive these longitudes and latitudes? We draw a circle and cut it into different pieces. And that structure of the circle, after drawing longitudes and latitudes, superimposed on the empirical data or diagram collected from the real earth. Then what is a map? It is a combining together of a priori longitude and latitudes and the map or the diagram derived from actual situation. This is the combination of a priori and a posteriori. Using that, we are navigating even now the aeroplanes, even the space shuttles are moving through these a priori categories. Can you show me west, east, south, and north? It is purely man-made construction, a priori construction without having any experience or data. So every research work or every science needs this a priori part and a posteriori part. This is our conclusion after a long process of analyzing what is on philosophy, what is ontology, and what is epistemology. The epistemology has contributed the conclusion that without the fusion of a priori and a posteriori, you cannot make valid conclusions and experiments and problem solving. And we are now entering into the methodology. This is the last and final part of my delivery, because after having gone through 2000 years of contributions to philosophy in the areas of ontology and epistemology, now we are entering into methodology. How a student can write a research thesis. First of all, he has to select an area. If he is a research student in economics, either he has to select agriculture or industry or tribal studies or investment and savings. This is the first step, an area. After selecting the area of research, he has to further focus it into a problem in that specific area. For example, if he is if the researcher, the investigator is a student in literature, assume that he is studying the novels of Alexander Dumas. there should be a problem. He has to suggest in generally in the novel writing. Some novelists are male chauvinists. The gender bias. Is there gender bias in the writings of Alexander Dumas? Because that is a specific problem. Similarly, in all subjects, since you are reading the books, you know that you can identify a specific problem in the area you have selected. Is there gender bias? I have read the book Three Musketeers for 100 times. And I am enchanted by the writer because there is a lady, Milady. And Milady is epitomized as cruelty. What it means? There is a gender bias in writing the text because from the beginning to end, that novel exposes the cruelties of Milady against the country, against the king, against her husband. So I am indicating you the method of selecting a problem. We should realize that problem is not research problem. To convert that problem into a research problem, there are many hypotheses regarding that problem. Why gender bias exists, or why tribes are underdeveloped, or why the literature students are not grasping the grammatical structure. All these are problems, and many hypotheses and many explanations are existing for solving the problem, particular problem. These explanations or these theories are known as existing theory or existing hypothesis or null hypothesis. So what is the meaning of null hypothesis? Null hypothesis is the existing accepted argument or theory or explanation for that problem. And what is alternate hypothesis? You are finding, the researcher is finding that there is a knowledge gap or a gap in the existing theories. And he is transforming the existing hypothesis into a new hypothesis. That is alternate hypothesis. So what is null hypothesis? So first you have to identify an area, then a problem, then the explanations given for the problem by different theoreticians, different researchers. And you have to write down all those contributions made by other researchers. Recording of that is known as review of literature. In review of literature, you are mentioning the earlier studies regarding that problem and their solutions. And as a conclusion of the review of literature, you have to say that these explanations are not covering or giving light to these areas, and I am enhancing the existing explanations, and I am giving my own explanation for this problem. This is alternate hypothesis. And this is the first step in research analysis. So every research student should focus. If this step is, you have accomplished this step, the remaining is very simple. So this is the large and the most intriguing work. That one part is the theoretical part, that is a priori theories given in the earlier literature. So all these are a priori. That means your theoretical part. And you are checking with the data. You are collecting data, classifying it, making conclusions, and you are stating that existing hypothesis is null hypothesis is not matching with the existing data. That means existing hypothesis is rejected. So my proposal, the alternate hypothesis, is accepted. This is how the thesis is to be written. This is the meaning of null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Sometimes the problem may be the universal applicability of existing explanation. That I have already explained in the case of drugs. There are many explanations you read and understand. So the anomalies in existing theory are the real research problem. So a deep knowledge in the theories explaining the reasons for the problem under study is the first step in research methodology. This is recorded in the research thesis as review of literature. So this is the a priori part, really. Already existing theories. That means that may be the conclusions derived from a posteriori, but you are treated it as theories, your arguments, propositions, all these are in formulating a research thesis. You will understand these steps not by hearing my class. You just take one or two research theses in your area and read it and check how that researcher has used the theories in explaining the reality. That is how you can understand what I am now explaining. Then after identification of the different variables and its functional relationships, which is the dependent variable and which is the independent variable. That means independent variable is the cause and the dependent variable is the effect. You have to identify it. You have to then check the nature of that relationship. The nature can be identified by, for example, the spread of coronavirus. You might have observed many diagrams. Is it linear? Is it logarithmic? Is it longitudinal? Is it exponential? Is it Gombert's? Is it inverse? One variable moving upwards, other variable moving downwards, etc. are the nature of relationships. So first you have to identify cause effect. And second you have to identify the nature of relationship. Then null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis, how to measure the data and the reasons for that, establishing your argument. And collect the sample, unbiased sample, checking the correspondence between your theory and the data collected. These are the steps in the research program, and I will, as a conclusion, discuss about the process of writing the thesis. In writing the thesis, now while registering might have given one title. That need not be followed when you present the thesis, because during the process of your research and analysis, you may find perhaps find different hypotheses, different objectives, different conclusions. There should be concord on the basis of the title. The investigator articulates the hypothesis. The objectives are the different steps to prove the hypothesis. And the last objective should be the concordance with the title and hypothesis. For example, I will just give you one example, because without giving examples, you may not grasp this. Assume that I am studying the difference between the heights of male and female students in our college. Already, one researcher has concluded that the height of males and females, average height of males and females are equal in this college. That is existing hypothesis. So I am putting forward an alternate hypothesis. What? It is not possible because historically it is different. So the conclusion may be due to bias in sample collected by the earlier researcher. So I am proposing that the average height of male and female students in the different in a college is different. So this should be my title. And what should be my objectives? My objective is to prove that the average height of both male and female students are different. So I have to write what is the tool? Just measuring the height. What is the method? Collecting sample, maybe random sampling or different types of sampling which keep the unbiasedness. Then my first objective, measuring the height of male students. Second objective, measuring the height of female students. Third objective, comparing the heights of male and female students. So I have three objectives. Three objectives are the steps for my final conclusion. So I am testing my by using some methods whether the data collected and conclusions are really suited to the population and making conclusion. So the concordance with or the consistency with title, the alternate hypothesis, final objective, and the steps in different objectives and final conclusion should be consistent. So the objectives are the steps moving towards the conclusion, the consistency of the title, the objective, hypothesis, and conclusion is your aim in writing a research thesis. For that you should use both a priori and a posteriori. A posteriori is the data, a priori is the theoretical conclusions, basic postulates that may not be from empirical data, that may be from your deduction or your propositions. Okay, I am concluding. These are the basic structure of a research work. You need not stick on to three objectives or something that, but this is the basic structure of a research thesis. Ultimately, on the basis of these informations, you should approach your research gauge. This discourse simply explains the contours of a research analysis. Actual investigation moves through the directions given by the research supervisor. Thank you. I am concluding. Thank you for keenly hearing my discourse. Thank you once again.